Don't forget to silence your phones. Also wanted to let you know that starting with this meeting for us, and actually starting about a week or so ago, all the city meetings are being video recorded. So the camera and live streamed. So people are sitting home perhaps watching us live. So what that means for next time is, maybe put more weight on personal grooming before you come. And the camera's hitting the back of your heads, and we're facing the cameras. So maybe you decide next time which way you want to face in the future. We're having trouble with meeting a quorum this morning. We've just attained it. I started the meeting at 9:20 a.m. We're going to be taking things out of sequence. We have some speakers. The mayor is going to speak, and Kevin Williams, Public Works Director, is going to speak, provided their schedules allow them to come back to the meeting. So we're going to take things out of sequence, and hopefully if they come back, they'll be able to talk. Although we need to make a note that they're on a tight time frame, and we'll probably interrupt the meeting to allow them to speak. Do you want to come back later or now? Or so we're going to go. Let's do roll call real quick to get everybody's volume control up there. I'm Stan Mills, Commissioner and Chair of the Boardwalk and Beach Committee.
Frank Cole, 24 Wilmington Avenue.
Allison Stein, 84 Sussex Street.
Guy Abernathy, 50 Wilmington.
Steve Carson, 210 Philadelphia Street.
Honey Fisher, North Boardwalk.
And we've got former Commissioner Jay Legree as a member of the public. Welcome. And also Mayor Paul Kuhns is with us. Because Mayor Kuhns has a tight time schedule, he's going to speak right now. And his topic is an introduction to the Association of Coastal Towns. I think it'll be comforting to know that there is a local group helping to lobby, if you will, for beach nourishment as well as some other things. So, Mayor, if you would take it away, please.
All right, great. Good morning, and thank you. And as Commissioner Mills said, there is a local group. It's called the Association of Coastal Towns that was formed really, I think, initially back in 04, 05 to look at beach replenishment and whatnot. And then with the economy the way it was, it kind of fizzled out and was restarted in the last few years. The 7 communities that are in there are Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach, Henlopen Acres, Lewis, Bethany, South Bethany, and Fenwick. And basically what the Association of Coastal Towns exists to collectively advocate for the well-being of our local communities and renowned beaches along the Delaware shore. Tourism and recreation being the main economic drivers of our communities, being the beaches, built upon the bedrock of clean water and healthy beaches. As I said, it was originally formed to lobby for Delaware sand dunes back in 2006 for protection. There was no official alliance set up at that time. I think there were 3 or 4 of the communities, but they were disbanded and joined the larger group, which is Sussex County Association of Towns, and so they merged in there. This group was restarted in 2016 as the 7 communities to focus on the issues important to the easternmost communities, and those issues were replenishment, dune replacement, and sea level rise. Replenishment and dredging are being the most pressing issues, especially from a funding issue. Rehoboth doesn't really have that much in the way of dredging issues unless you look at the canal, whereas places, Lewis, they actually have commerce using the canal. If you look at South Bethany and Bethany, all of those areas, they really have issues with dredging because of the storm surge. And so a lot of the places, we don't have storm surge so much, but we do have the ocean surge. Whereas in Dewey, almost all of these communities have base surge. And so the Sussex County, or the Association of Coastal Communities, is both the replenishment as well as the dredging. basically, as we've gotten in further in the discussions in this group, we've gotten more involved in additional issues being offshore drilling or inland bay activities. The focus of ACT is really on portions of the Sussex County comp plan, which are related to beach replenishment schedules, dredging, navigable waterways, erosion, sea level rise, and back bay flooding. There is, Rehoboth has, and I think it started in '05, a 50-year contract with the Army Corps of Engineers, as do many of these other communities, and that pretty much so from a replenishment side goes every 3 years or so. And just as an aside, the beach replenishment for Rehoboth is scheduled for this fall. The 2019, they're going to bid on that in the next couple of months this spring, and then they plan on the replenishment to start, hopefully, depending on schedules, in the fall to be done by January. ACT, as I said, advocates for coastal industry, coastal tourism. We have monthly meetings of the 7 communities. We typically have them up in the Lewis City Hall. The public's welcome. Ted Becker, who is the mayor of Lewis, is the president of the Association of Coastal Towns. We have Tony Pratt as part of the group. Tony Pratt worked for DENREC for approximately 38 years, and so he's very familiar with the area, with basically the back bays as well as ocean, all of the water situations. And actually, Tony is now a lobbyist for the Association of Coastal Towns. He does work for us up in Dover as well as in Washington, and he's got a lot of connections to both of those groups from his many years with DENREC. He provides basically future vision based on experience with intimate relations with DENREC in the past. We also have members of Delaware Sea Grant with us at these meetings. And Sea Grant actively funds scientific research to understand marine environment, coastal economies, issues that affect all of those, environmental challenges and solutions for coastal communities and ecosystems. DENREC also has a representative, used to be Tony Pratt, now it's Mike Powell, who also attends our meetings, and if Mike can't, one of his assistants does. And basically, he works for DENREC, which is Delaware National Resource and Environmental Control Agency. Their big thing is a healthy environment, and they have commitment to protection, enhancement, and enjoyment of the environment and stewardship of the natural resources. We also have people that attend our meetings from the Resilient Community Partnership that we've established, that Rehoboth is now the lead on the Resilient Partnership. We've gotten 2 grants in the neighborhood of total of $75,000 from the state. And what we are doing is trying to work with outside consultants, where the money will go, to develop ordinances for the coastal communities on stormwater maintenance, beach replenishment, various different things around the communities that are needed. Let's see. These are, as I said, the Resilient Community Partnership is local governments to take the necessary steps to be sustainable and resilient. There's a collaboration with Rehoboth Beach at the helm of recent grants to technically assistance and funding to reduce the impacts of coastal and climate threats. An additional partner in our group at ACT is Chris Basin attends, or one of his assistants, and he's with the Center for Inland Bays. And their big push is the protection and preservation of the inland bays. And then one other group that we have that joins us at some of our meetings is the Delaware Bay communities. And these are communities that go up the Delaware Bay, up past Lewis, Broadkill, Penn's Landing, all these areas all the way up the bay, because they're having the same problems, if not worse problems than we have as far as replenishment or storm surge. And again, as I mentioned before, the biggest thing that I think affects most of these communities, obviously we all are affected by the beach because we all use the beach, but it's really the back bays, whether it is dredging or whether it is flooding from the back bays. And that's where I think working with the Resilient Community Partnership will be helpful as we work with the municipalities to develop the possibility of better ordinances for stormwater maintenance, for flooding maintenance, dredging maintenance. And then finally, as we look at replenishment, right now, as I said, there's a 50-year contract with the federal government and the Army Corps of Engineers, and I believe the numbers are on replenishment is approximately 65% comes from federal and 35% comes from the state. And that state number, if you want to see where we get it, there is an 8% tax on motels and hotels in the state of Delaware. And of that 8%, one of the 8 goes specifically to beach replenishment around the state. And so that's where the state's funds come from. However, as with anything in Washington or even Dover, the future of funding is always a question. And they have talked for a few years, and I think it's just getting a little bit louder that there's a possibility that the state may start coming to the municipalities for money and saying, okay, 35% we're putting up, but we'd like you to put up X number of percent of that. And so that's always the big worry of where the money is going to come from in the future. You never know about the federal government. They could cut back as well, because there's always people in the Midwest that say, why should we put money in our taxes in for beach replenishment? It's the same thing. People on the coast are going to say the same thing about agricultural things. So that's one of our big worries, and it's always something that's going to be at the back of our mind from the ACT perspective, because Rehoboth's a little bit better shape as far as bringing in revenues than because of the larger budget, but still it's a struggle to bring in revenues to pay for these type of things. And we're just very fortunate to have the state government and the federal government being able to put monies in for these replenishment. And then one last thing on the dredging. Again, the dredging would affect us. It would be nice for us to have the canal dredged, because it is difficult even on small boats, but the dredging money from a federal perspective is focused on communities with a lot of water commerce, and we don't have that. Even Lewis doesn't really have that. I think there of the 19 bodies of water that could be dredged on a regular basis, only 3 provide revenues to the state and the federal government, and that's one of them being the Port of Wilmington, and, but we're not one of them, and we're not anywhere close in any of the communities here in the south, or excuse me, the east. With that, that's all I really have on ACT. As I mentioned, it's we have typically Friday meetings, second or third Friday of the month up in Lewis. We do put the minutes of those meetings up on the website, the City of Rehoboth website, as well as those agendas, and those are open to the public. And it's an interesting point of view to have from each of these different communities, because each of these 7 communities, although very similar, are very different as well, different demographics and different needs. With that, any questions anybody has on ACT? I know that was a lot.
I think. Thank you very much. I think what it shows is that there's a local group, and there's something positive about strength in numbers. Then we've got the mayors, city managers of all the local beach towns lobbying for these different things. And of course, the one that perks my ears is beach nourishment, beach replenishment.
Yeah, and that is what the real focus is. You know, it's expanded to the dredging because the other communities needing that, but it's really climate change. I mean, all these things that are going on with the climate, and every time we have a big storm, it's not so much what happens on the ocean anymore, although it sucks out the sand, but what we've realized over the years, the dunes really help. Especially some of these big storms that take out some of the dunes, but leave the boardwalk, which is a great thing. But what we're finding with climate change and the storm surge, it's getting worse and worse coming from the bays than it is from the ocean. It's pretty disturbing. Yes?
Just one question. Is there dredging that's going to happen on the canal this year?
No.
Okay, it's not.
No.
There was some talks or something.
I didn't
maybe,
want to be confusing. I don't see dredging happening on the canal, and I think the last time it happened was probably 15 plus years ago. I wouldn't see that happening anytime soon because the Army Corps of Engineers is concentrating on places where there's commerce. And again, nobody uses that really for commerce. It's more of tourism, and you know, people are hoping that they're just smaller boats. And but it is pretty disturbing when you go by over the bridge at low tide and you see, you know, the mud up the sides. And you know, if you have a boat that has a draw of maybe 3.5, 4 feet, you can get stuck at low tide.
Anything else for the mayor? Thank you very much for your time and coming. Sorry we were a little late. If you see Kevin, tell him that if he's tight on time, we can incorporate him into the May meeting.
Yeah, I think he's going to try to get back here.
Yeah, and if not, then thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
We're going to go on to the next bit of business, and that is approval of the minutes. Meeting held on March 11th, 2019. Those draft minutes were distributed ahead of the meeting. So if you've had time to read them, then I would entertain a motion and a second for approval.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of March 11th.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second by Steve and Honey to approve the minutes as presented. Any comments, discussion? No, if not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And so the minutes and before us for the March 11th meeting are considered adopted. I received no correspondence to report for this meeting. We'll go on the next bit of old business, was just, again, just a review of the mission statement. For those that are watching, the Boardwalk and Beach Committee examines issues related to maintaining the boardwalk and beach as major assets within the city. And we have some guiding principles: clean, safe, friendly, do no harm, and aesthetics are important. Recently, we kind of clarified them. And as you can see on the screen, clean means not trashy or sanitary, well maintained. Safe is looking and feeling secure. Well lighted, law enforcement visible. Friendly, we've defined as staff welcoming and helpful. Do no harm is avoid doing any damage to the boardwalk by whatever means. And aesthetics are important. We've talked about protecting our brand. Those are our guiding principles as we go forward with all these things. We're going to go to continued discussion on bicycle use on the boardwalk, including signage, routing to the boardwalk, access and egress, particularly at the north end. Supporting documents that are embedded in the agenda online are the final report on bicycle routing, which includes a note from the chair of the Streets and Transportation Committee, as well as John Eckenrode, and you can see that stuff. I put together some slides on this. I always like to try to illustrate concepts. And hopefully, we've got enough time today for a discussion on bicycle routing, particularly in the north area there. I put in a few slides just as a reminder that when we talk about bicycles, I believe we have to talk not just about bicycles, but bicycles that pull trailers, surreys, and any other similar type of things. We're talking specifically right now about the north tip of the boardwalk, as we did last meeting. We were reminded that there is a designed vehicle access. Welcome, Chief. Chief Banks of the Police Department just joined us. Thank you, Chief. We're just starting on the bicycle topic. We're going to be reviewing 4 options shortly. The north tip of the boardwalk is we can define it ourselves as where the wood boardwalk ends and the concrete sidewalk begins up north of the Henlopen condominium at Surfside Place. And just a reminder, we have a designated designed vehicle access at Virginia Avenue. That becomes important later in the discussion. This is just a picture of aerial of that whole area there, where you can see again, here's the north end of the boardwalk, and you've got Surfside Place, which is a one-way street out. And then you've got Lakeview, and you've got Grenoble. And then you've got down here access to Virginia Avenue. Again, just refreshing our memory of what some of this area looks like. This is an aerial courtesy of Honey from the Henlopen condos looking north in that area. This is that same area looking almost straight down at the handicap parking area and the handicap ramp. And if you recall from last discussion and a report that this committee evaluated vehicles entering and exit over top of the handicap ramp and decided that to make a recommendation that if the city is going to continue to use that as a vehicular entrance and exit, then the handicap parking space should be moved northerly a few spaces. The handicap ramp should likewise move north next to that, allowing for a new asphalt ramp specifically for vehicles to get on and off. And of course, where that might come into play is where bicycles might be able to use that area also. Just a reminder that Grenoble's Place has a wood area here. It's really not designed for bicycles to come on and off, but it could easily be adapted with a ramp there. And then Virginia Avenue is a vehicular entry that it would be ready to accept bicycles. So we're going to take a look at four recommendations from the City Street Transportation Committee, a fifth recommendation from John Eckenrode, and then take a look and see if we have any recommendations that we would like to pass forward. And I did want to give a little caveat that I gave last time in that, you know, Kathy Osterholm, the chair of the Street Transportation, was here last time. Very nice, and she was able to answer a lot of questions and everything. And I mentioned that, you know, I believe each committee kind of has different missions, different purposes, different perspectives. We see things different than they do. And I think that's all right. So if our recommendations collide with theirs or mirror theirs, I think that's fine. The main thing is each of our groups are going to be submitting some recommendations if we get that far. And the city manager, the mayor and commissioners will have the opportunity to look at those and engage what our perspectives are and then let them make decisions. So let's take a look at the four recommendations by the City Streets and Transportation Committee. This is taken from their memo. If you recall, one is a walk your wheels zone from Grenoble to the north tip of the boardwalk, essentially in front of Stuart Kingston and the Henlopen Contail, a walk your wheels zone. We're going to go over that. Their second idea was to expand the sidewalk, and then she clarified, really provide a bike lane in the north rather than expanding the sidewalk. Number 3 recommendation for S&T was to enter and exit at Grenoble on a wider ramp, and exit and enter at Virginia was the 4th recommendation. So let's take a look at each of these real quick and evaluate them and see what our recommendations might be. Again, here's the area from the Henlope and from Grenoble on the right to Surfside Place. I don't know if anybody has any ideas on it. I mean, I'm going to throw out one of my evaluation criteria is it realistic? Are bicyclists really going to do it? How much signage do we need? And that's for me a critical thing. How much signage do we need on some of these? And so I just did a quickie here that found it kind of difficult to put everything in, but you know, their first recommendation again was walk your wheels zone. And so how I interpreted that is that if you come into this area here, you can still get on, but then there needs to be a sign there that says walk your wheels. And then down here, there needs to be some kind of sign that says now it's okay to mount your wheels and ride your bike. And the vice versa. You're coming north, there's going to be a set of signs here, I suppose, that say if you want to go straight, you have to dismount and walk your bike. But if you want to keep riding, you have to turn to the left. And same thing with all these areas here is signage. If you're going to ride your bike up here, then we're telling you to don't go that way, go straight, make a left, make a right. So I'm looking at signage and I'm looking at enforcement and trying to evaluate. And I have my own opinion, and I'll share later. But
I'm trying to understand what it is they think this will accomplish by putting the walk your bike.
If you recall, Kathy said the Street Transportations Committee's goal, it's in our minutes, is to try to paraphrasing it, trying to optimize bicycle routing onto and off the boardwalk in as safe a manner as possible. And I think most of everybody would probably agree, let's see, that this area up here could very likely get very congested. And
There
has
is a
that
blind
been a
spot
problem
there.
in the past?
well, you asked that last
Yeah.
time, and she said there was no data or anything to show anything like that. So,
And the question what I have, are
Yeah.
they advocating the passage of a new ordinance that would prohibit people from riding the north end of the boardwalk, or would this be suggestive?
I have no clue.
Because I have no problem with it being suggestive, but I think to do it as an ordinance, it's a little unrealistic. To expect, you know, the average person using reasonable judgment going north on the boardwalk, and I don't see the compliance being very
It
high.
said
I don't
suggestions
see
in
that
there.
happening either.
It said
Speak up.
It said suggestions in there, right below their 4 points in their letter to us, as far as it goes. So it sounds like it's suggestions, whatever that means.
Right. Well, you know, one of my approaches, I guess, is to look at, is it realistic? How many are going to do it? But I also said at the last meeting, if it only gets 10% or 20% of the people to comply, might that be a good thing? But then I have to balance it with the cost of the signage and more signage, which this committee generally seems to disfavor. You know, certainly I do, you know, putting too much signage up there. So is it worth doing that? But remember, we've got some other.
Introduce the correspondence with James Wilson, the
Yeah.
delegate. So I interact with the president or the executive director of Bike Delaware, who also sits on DelDOT's Bicycle Council. And next week they're going to be rolling out, starting in the city of Newcastle, a bicycle wayfinding sign. They apparently got regulatory authority from the Federal Highway Administration and the U.S. Department of Transportation to do a unique bicycle wayfinding sign that would be statewide. So it's going to start in Newcastle. It's going to be in the city of Newark shortly thereafter. As far as I can gather, there's no cost to the city of Rehoboth, and I would realistically expect them to start doing signs on the Junction Breakwater Trail, the Gordon's Pond Trail, the new Lewis to Georgetown Trail. So possibly this new wayfinding campaign that the state is involved in could be incorporated not only in the boardwalk but citywide as a bicycle wayfinding solution to what Streets and Transportation is trying to address.
And how that all marries in here, I don't know, because,
Well, you
you
can
have more
see-
and more signs that bring people to this area, then might it realize our fears that there's more congestion there or something.
But if the proposal is to be suggestive, and like someone said, if you could get just a fraction of the people to take that route, it might alleviate congestion. And I do think there's going to be applications for this new Del Dot campaign throughout the city, I would imagine.
Any comments specifically on this recommendation? Because we want to go through all of them real quick, and then we can come back and fine tune or dismiss them at that point too. So, Allison has a question.
Well, is the wayfinding program that you're referring to the same as
No.
this? Okay.
No, it's
Just
brand new.
Same name?
No.
This one's called wayfinding program.
Yeah,
This Merge is, I think, a multimodal wayfinding system that the city is contracted with already.
yeah.
Okay.
And it's not just bicycles, but pedestrians, cars, all
So
people.
just coincidentally the same name.
Correctly, yeah. And then the printout that Guy has there is what I also forwarded to y'all yesterday afternoon.
And that's what you're referring to, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would
Okay.
those also be similar to like what they say walk your bike type thing, or these are just directional as far as where to go to find things in town?
The way it was put to me is that signs, traffic signs, are one of the most heavily regulated things out there. So the state has been given the regulatory authority by the federal government to do signs statewide, and they'll be in compliance with it's called the Uniform Traffic Devices.
Manual of Uniform Traffic
Right. Control
Devices.
So I don't know how true this is, but apparently when you do these signs and when you get approval from the feds, they're less likely to withhold any monies from you if you're seeking transportation monies, and there's also a little bit, I don't know how realistic this is, there's a little bit of protection as far as liability goes. If you put a sign up that's in compliance with the federal guidelines, you're protected from liability.
I see the wayfinding signage and all that, and both programs, the city program and the state program, as maybe at some point augmenting this. But I still see that you've got to try to address the situation here and resolve it, because you need a plan to be able to put the signs out there giving people direction.
Once again, I come up at it with,
Yeah.
if it's suggestive and you want to put a sign suggesting this circuitous route to get to points north, I'm fine with it. But if it has the force of law, if it's a new ordinance, I would be against it.
Well, I think one of the things I'm trying to push forward is we have at least 5 recommendations here. Do we want to dismiss any, or do we want to suggest that all 5 should be considered, or do we want to prioritize things? I think there's better solutions than this, for instance.
Maybe we could hear them.
I was wondering what problem this suggestion corrects? I mean, for having people get on off the bike, is it a problem for people riding across the boardwalk at that point?
Well, I believe there will be, especially with increased bicycle traffic, more and more challenges at this corner up here.
It's a real blind spot there.
With bicyclists going off. If we go to their number 2, I've got more pictures that might help.
Can
or
you go
something.
back to the slide that shows the overhead of the exact point where you exit and enter the boardwalk? Right there.
Well, there's
Yeah.
one,
So in a way, you've got almost 3 sidewalks there. You've got the sidewalk just east of the meters. You've got the sidewalk that,
which is for pedestrians only,
Right.
right?
And bikers always go up there.
And then what's your number 2?
and then the one that's closest to the Henlopen Hotel, and then you have that
Right here.
entrance, kind of there in the corner, or the crux of that
Board-
angle.
Boardwalk, concrete sidewalk going north. There's a little 5-foot wide sidewalk here. But you've got the city vehicles going off there. And you'll see for the second recommendation of the street committee, they are directing people on bicycles here.
Would there be a problem to taking the boardwalk and intersecting that angle and making an entrance and an exit from the boardwalk that looks more like the Virginia Avenue
I
entrance?
mean, up here, changing this to wood or something.
It would just seem if it makes a little bit of a left turn at a 45-degree angle, you could get all users on and off the boardwalk in the same way that users use the Virginia Avenue entrance to the boardwalk.
I think that's a
Plus the vehicles.
good option, yeah. So it's a matter of reconfiguring. You still need to move the handicap space north, the handicap ramp north, and then reconfigure how the exit would be there or something.
If the Virginia Avenue is the designated spot, why are
It's a-
vehicles coming
it's-
on
it's a-
on here?
Because when the city changed from that full-size trash truck to that smaller vehicle, this thing, they found that they could now collect trash directly putting it in the trailer from Virginia North. Before, they had to take the big truck off at Virginia.
Okay.
Now that they can do that, I think it's more efficient, it's a good program. But as this committee said, if the city's gonna use that, then they need to stop going off and on the handicap ramp there, because that's a liability, that's for the disabled. And let's reconfigure it. And so I think, depending on what our recommendation is here, we may reinforce that recommendation.
Stan, can we go to the overhead that from Honey's unit that shows the broad view of looking down? Right there, that's fine. So, there's a possible issue with the area immediately north of the boardwalk, but everyone I talk to brings up a much bigger, potentially more dangerous issue, and that is the turn right there between Surf and Lake.
Yeah.
And people on their bikes, and I guess you could say pedestrians too, it's such a blind turn. It may not be in our purview because it's not exactly the boardwalk, but for boardwalk users who are cutting across, right at where Lake turns into Surf, I think it's been discussed before, and I think it's a much more likely place for conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really think directing bikes along there to encourage them to get on and off is waiting for an accident.
Well, if we can do this, let me go to the next option, okay? Because we've kind of moved to the next one already. So we're looking at, this again was the walk your wheels zone, one option. The next is expand the sidewalk. Remember, it's really not expand the sidewalk, it's provide a bike lane in the north. Now, this is rather lengthy, but again, I'm doing this to try to explain to the layperson that looks at this here's the area we're talking about. Again, we're trying to minimize congestion and stuff. We're talking about this area here. Jay, feel free to speak up. Chief, you too. This is just redundant. You can see the area north of the boardwalk. Here's the congestion area down here that we're trying to resolve. Okay, so if you recall last time I tried to do some slides to illustrate this. And while I was up there taking some pictures with the chief, there's a bicyclist on there. One of the things we're trying to do is make sure that sidewalk is for pedestrians only, not sidewalk. If we follow the Street and Transportations Committee's recommendation, they wanted to add two bike lanes against the curb. Kathy mentioned 2.5, 2.5 foot bike lanes. and that she mentioned that yeah, they were narrow, but you know, if you've got to swerve around each other, then fine. Well, first of all, I disagree with that. I mean, you got cars parked there, and it's too narrow. There's no place to swerve. What are you going to do? You're going to go into a car. So I'm looking at my illustrations being a little wider area and trying to give segregated areas for this. Because also, again, I'm looking at bicycles. The bicycle with a trailer, what do you call those things? Just a
Trailers.
bicycle trailer. And then you've got the Surreys, they're all trying to use the same area too, you know? So there's one illustration. But you've got the front car bumper that overhangs the area. So you've got to have those parking stops, in my view, back another 4 feet. So now we've got, say, one bicycle lane of 3 feet, another 3 is 6, and 3 are probably 4 feet. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You've got 9 or 10 foot of area there that we've lost. So what happens? That pushes the cars back. Now what I did is I put my car up here the day before the triathlon when there wasn't many cars there. You see this bicyclist going behind me there. There's plenty of room for a car to get back there behind me. But if I move the vehicle out to that distance, that 9 or 10 feet that I showed in my illustration, we get this kind of thing. So you've got 2 bicycle lanes, you got bumpers, you've got the bumper sticking in front of it. You don't have enough travel lane there anymore. And so remember, this was a question at the last meeting, if you were here. And so I had Keith Banks, Chief Police Department out. We looked at it. Indeed, we verified that we would have to reconfigure this island or something if you wanted to try to do that. So I guess I wanted comments. Are there any? I have a suggestion on the next slide, but I wanted to start with you all. Do you all have, particular to that idea, any?
We could put parallel parking on that one little side here and take away all the parking that's going to be affected by moving it back 10 feet.
So now we're losing parking.
Right.
Yeah.
But one way or another, if you do that, you're going to lose parking.
Unless you take part of the triangle out, right?
Right.
What was that, Guy?
Unless you take part of the triangle out, then that's not what you're referring to. Another way to really do that.
Yeah. One of the things you have to note also is the very end parking space is a handicap parking space.
Oh.
So yeah, the parking space could move back and people can navigate, but they're going to have to cross through a bicycle lane. But the same thing would happen up in the front, you know, so we just got to exercise caution.
So is it would seem like this proposal is in conflict with the walk your wheels proposal. So is this if you do this, you don't need the walk your wheels?
I think of the 4 recommendations, it was one or the other.
Yeah. I don't like this one at all because of the way it's directing across Surf
Would it
Avenue.
be possible, now I'm gonna have everybody with me. Would it be possible to put a barrier at the edge of the Henlopen so that bicycles could not cross that area? And there would be no bicycles that could get onto the boardwalk from the north.
And then you couldn't get fire trucks and emergency vehicles.
Will emergency
Where are you
vehicles have to
talking
come on
now?
there? I thought emergency vehicles came on at the parking lot on the other side of the.
Virginia.
You can't get a fire
Well,
truck.
Virginia Avenue is the closest vehicular entrance.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Are you talking about some Jersey walls up here that don't?
Yeah, some kind of a thing that the Europeans use. People can get through there, but bikes cannot.
What if there's a fire at Virginia Avenue and you need it?
Or you come on at Virginia, or you can't get your truck on there anyway. You back your truck up to there. I'm talking about the pumper or the ladder truck. There's no way they'll get on the boardwalk at the end of too narrow.
Right.
Well, I guess my philosophy is the typical visitor that's here wants to go the entirety of the boardwalk from north to south, south to north. And that trying to get them, I mean, I can remember bicycling on all those boardwalks up north.
Yeah.
And to me, there was never a barrier. I don't recall any ever having a barrier.
Yeah.
Time limits and restrictions, certainly.
Yeah.
And so it kind of, it doesn't sit well with me to think that we would have to put a barrier and not allow bicycles on there.
Or make the
I
bicycles
think
turn
that this is the natural area where bicycles need to come on and go off. And so that's why I'm trying to look at it as, if you believe in that, then what is the safest methodology to allow to do that?
I think what I'm trying to say is, and I'm guilty. I rode the boardwalk when we were dredging out there for the outfall. I rode the boardwalk every day, and I always came in at the end, ran all the way to Queen Street, and got off. And that's wrong. You know, that's wrong. It's hard getting on and off there. It's dangerous right there.
Right here.
Yeah, but that's what I did every day. And if there had been a barrier there at the corner of the Himlopen Hotel, I would not have done that. I probably wouldn't have gotten the boardwalk. But all the little families and the kids and everybody that likes to ride up and down the boardwalk, they should be allowed to do that. And if there was a barrier there, they could ride their bikes to that barrier, turn around and ride back towards the middle of the town. If I had my way, we'd make it very difficult for people that are going from Lewis on the trail and are going to ride down Roeth Avenue and get on the trail that goes back to the north. I'd make it very difficult for them to get on the boardwalk. And I know people do that. There's a group of about 5 or 6 guys that I ride behind frequently. And they do just what I said. They get on at the end of the sidewalk there, and they ride all the way down to the kiosk, and they sit on the steps and they have coffee, and they do it every day. And those people probably didn't need to be on the boardwalk.
Well, I'm not sure I'm ready to ban entry there. I am against, and this committee was against, putting on maps of routing that directed people to there because of the numbers increasing. But I'm not sure. And remember, we've also got John Eckenrode's recommendation to look at that kind of similar.
Could we go back to their proposal of the bike lane, the 2 little bike lanes?
You mean my drawings?
The one that Kathy and yeah, that one. So what occurs to me when I look at this is, instead of delineating sidewalk and bike lane, and this might have its own pitfalls, but just for the sake of argument, what if what's now the sidewalk was extended a couple of feet, say, or maybe even 1 foot, and that area was treated as boardwalk? And the other thing I'd like to ask is, are those meters going to be going away with the new parking system? Or are they going to, this summer, are they going to be as shown?
Not this summer. They're going to be left alone. We're just kind of, new meters that are replacing these meter heads are going out from Rehoboth Avenue. And by the way, I think the meter heads that won't be put on, they're going to leave the meter pole this first year so people can learn the new system. But
I guess
so you're recommending.
I'm not advocating. I'm not recommending. I'm
okay.
just throwing it out there as an idea.
Okay.
When I look at this, I say, well, why not just add a foot or 2 and treat that whole area from a user perspective as boardwalk? Now, it may create more problems there at where that mean turn is between Surf and Lake, but it would, and I'm not saying you would have to advertise it as part of the boardwalk, but just from an enforcement perspective, we could treat that area as boardwalk, where when it's legal to ride on the boardwalk, you can ride on that. When it's not, you can't.
I guess I have a concern. One is that it's like widening this. It's concrete. We're telling nobody that they're supposed to ride on concrete sidewalk. I know there's an exception up at the avenue. I think the bigger concern for me is dumping people, asking people to get on and off here. And I have a suggestion later that utilizes the lanes, but we can look at that later. So I hear you, and I'm not sure.
It would also eliminate the problem right now. If you're coming south from Gordon's Pond and you want to take this route to the boardwalk, you're breaking the law. You're going against a one-way street. So if that was Boardwalk, you would no longer be going against one-way traffic there. You wouldn't be breaking the law as far as the one-way street.
I think your idea puts bicycles here. Their idea puts bicycles here, and I don't think either work.
Well, I agree that there's a huge problem if you extended it all the way up, but perhaps you extend it maybe 10 or 20 yards shy of the street and funnel people out.
Then get people out here.
What happens if you go on the other, where the other cars are parked?
Over here?
Like over this way? Like the next row? Isn't there another row of cars like along there?
Back here?
And come off the boardwalk where the ramp might be, if that was changed to a ramp, right by that the open condo?
Can we pause and let's look at John's, and then I have a suggestion too. But John Ecken Road was, he's on the Streets of Transportation, but he submitted this separately, privately to us and also to that committee. Right. His recommendation was to, for this area here, to modify it to get people off the boardwalk, or bicyclists off the boardwalk here, but then have them utilize the travel lanes. And that's something that's more appealing to me, because we're trying to teach everybody, go with traffic, flow with traffic, go in the traffic lane. So if you do that and you follow his suggestion, he's got Sharrows here saying once you get off, you must only go to the right, and then you go off here and here. Now the problem with that, of course, is getting back on is a little more challenging. According to his diagram, you're coming this way and you've got no enter signs, so you've got to have a sign up here that directs you down here, that then directs you to here and up Surfside Place to then get on. Okay, so I think it can work, but it's more circuitous for getting off there. And that's one suggestion. Where it does not, you're not limited to these widths here, you know, because you've got the whole travel lane. And again, these are very limiting. So I don't know what you feel about this. This is one of my suggestions, I guess, or one of my thoughts. And I find this very challenging, actually. So, you know, but again, I'm looking at several philosophies here. One is I want people to get off and on at that point. I do think this is a very guarded area there, that you have to have signage or something on the street it's the perfect storm. You got people walking, jogging, and bicyclists and surreys all getting on and off at the same place.
It's a really dangerous place. I ride it all the time. You know, there's a crosswalk there, and half the time there are people in the crosswalk.
Well, what I'm trying to do is I move the handicap space up and the handicap ramp up. You've got a bigger asphalt area there that gets trucks on and off, and also bicyclists. I bring the bicyclists into the travel lanes, which has, again, no size restrictions, you know, so you don't have to worry about two side by side.
Is that done by the bicycle imprint on the pavement? Is that done by the bicycle imprint on the pavement type thing, so they know where to ride, or what would you do? Just let that go?
Yeah, I would. Like where these arrows are,
Right,
maybe they become Sharrows or something, you know. And as you can see, what I did is I changed this. Chief and I went up there and we looked at it, and there is room to accommodate two-way traffic there. Mm-hmm. And so I'm favoring dumping them into two-way traffic with these Sharrows there, so that they continue to, once they're off the boardwalk, then essentially they're on city streets. And then they're following them. Now, it doesn't mean that it wouldn't need an engineer to reconfigure some of this, maybe some of this islands chopped off, maybe a few parking spaces here, or change directionality or something like this. But the distance between here for two travel lanes and here is actually wider than the distance over here.
Be safer too.
So anyhow, that is I call it Stan's Concepts.
Stan, can I add one last thing?
Yes.
I think that it's possible that you could do both. You could have a multimodal entrance at the corner of the Henlopen Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
You could add a foot, maybe even two, to what's now the sidewalk on Surfside Place,
Mm-hmm.
and then people could choose whether to go what is now sidewalk north or exit the boardwalk at the corner of the Henlopen Hotel. And it's just an idea about making that area that's now sidewalk undefined, but I'd like to point out that right now there's plans already in the works and they'll come to fruition soon where the state's going to be bringing in people on bicycles on the north side of Rehoboth Avenue across the Canal Bridge. And I think it's fair to say it's undefined. Is it sidewalk? Yes. Are bicycles going to be allowed on that part of the sidewalk? Yes. So, and that seems to be the trend is not making a clear distinction between sidewalk and bicycle lane. It's a multimodal, multi-use path. The danger, I think, and I'm a huge I do not like people riding on the sidewalk, adults in particular, and I think that's a problem that's pervasive all around town. But in certain instances, like what the state's doing at the Canal Bridge, you're allowing both cyclists and pedestrians to share the same space. Whether it'll work or not, I don't know. Time will tell. But I see a possibility to look into it in that area on Surfside Place.
Well,
I could separate lanes for bikes and pedestrians?
I don't think it's going to be defined. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, I don't
There's like
remember.
a little
I could almost buy your arguments, Frank, but for this one thing, dumping people out
Yeah,
there,
don't like
for me, it fails. And I understand, if there was something up here to get people off, that maybe that's a possibility. So in other words, this black square, we widen the sidewalk and this black square is up here somewhere.
I think that's a valid criticism, but regardless of what's being done on the boardwalk, I think a lot of people are expecting the city to do something about that dangerous curve at Surf and where Surf turns into lake there. So
Up here?
That's a separate issue.
Up here, yeah,
I think that's far in the
I
future.
know nothing about. Do you know anything about that,
I think
Chief?
no, I think that's would be far.
I
in the
can't
future.
imagine that the city would be entertaining anything. I don't know, but
That's the dangerous thing is coming south. You got to cross traffic. I do this. You have to, not anymore, but I did when we were dredging. You have to cross traffic and you have to go across that crosswalk. And there are cars coming, people coming, and you're coming from the north. It's just a really dangerous thing to get on the sidewalk there. Coming south, at least coming from the south, at least you can hang to the right and keep on going north, and you don't have to cross traffic. All you gotta do is look to your left. It's really
Steve,
dangerous.
could you go back to that last picture again?
this one, okay.
If you look at maybe a half measure, take what is now sidewalk on Surfside Place, go halfway to right where your cursor was, right there, and make that the entrance. Take away 2 or 3 parking spots and dump people off there. That gives them, I don't know the exact distance there, but to me that looks like about 30 yards. And they're gonna slow down when they come off, but you could have an entrance and an exit right in the middle of where those cars are parked.
Then keep the handicap
that
parking
picture.
where it's at, you mean?
Could do that, or you could also, have an entrance at the corner of the Henlopen Hotel.
So bikes
So
are
it
not,
is-
not supposed to be on this sidewalk.
Or not?
Okay.
They're not, that's why.
So if we move the exit and entrance ramp down, aren't we encouraging?
It would be in effect extending the boardwalk,
Okay, all right,
although it
too.
wouldn't necessarily have to be announced or publicized.
So
in my
would
opinion.
that be where the trash truck gets off and on as well?
It'd be up to the streets
Then you wouldn't
department.
have to.
Well, so that's a good
They would
point.
make
Yeah.
the corner
You would
now.
need this area here to get the trash truck on and off. And remember, trash truck, we're talking about the ATV trailer or
Yeah.
something small that would best probably get off sooner than later. So, I mean, that I can.
Would it be better for them to get off later? Or not? Rather than make the turn right there.
well, the problem is it's so narrow,
Yeah.
bicycles can get around them up here. If they are traveling up here, nobody can get around them because they're even with adding a little width there. So, I mean, I don't mind redrawing this so that we can look at that and pass it on and say, here's another option.
All of these things seem to be interrelated, and they all seem to kind of crux on redesigning this entire area from a traffic and a pedestrian and a bicycle perspective.
Right.
So as far as recommendations, I don't know if you can make any hard recommendations except redesign that whole area. Would that require an engineer, a consultant, a traffic study? I'm not sure.
No, not a traffic study, but let's go look at 3 and 4, and then let's go back to see, are there any we want to discuss? Chief, if you got.
I would just look at the clock. I have a 10:30 meeting with the city.
No, you go ahead. I appreciate you coming. Do you have
The
any?
only thing I would add to your last thing, I think Frank's moving it in the right direction. But I have to say, if I'm that close halfway down, I'm on a bike, I don't think I'm gonna get off or turn there to go behind cars. I'm just gonna look around and continue straight there. So I don't know that, I guess it goes back to your thing, to get 10% or 20% to do that. But that close down, I see where I wanna go. I'm not sure that I would jump off and go behind cars. I would just keep in front and all. But I think it's valid where his mind's thinking as far as it working. So I think at the end of the day, we're gonna have to come down to have an engineer look at that area if we really wanna make significant changes. It's my 2 cents or whatever. Because it is dangerous. It's getting more and more congested. There's more and more bikes, which is a good thing. So how do we fix that to make it safe for all, and the pedestrians is walking up there too, and baby carriages and everything else.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're good. You can leave.
Apologize.
Thank you, Chief, for being here. Let's take a look at these other options real quick. Exit and enter at Grenoble on a wider ramp. That's I guess signage here to get people off, and then there's signs here and here to get back, and vice versa. Again, for me, if you're intending to have this, I guess you do that if this is a no bike zone, which I don't favor. I think people are gonna do it. So I don't have that. And then the fourth one was directing people to come down all the way down to here and enter at Virginia. And I think that's even farther away. Now maybe.
Wouldn't that just increase people staying on First Street all the way to Rehoboth Avenue rather than using the boardwalk then?
Well, I don't know if the signage is intended to say boardwalk this way.
I'm not so sure I'd want the city directing, like, my young kids off of the boardwalk and onto city streets if they were out riding their bike up and down the boardwalk. That seems like not wise.
I don't think that's the point. I think this is trying to collect the people who are coming from the state park.
Well,
The ones that are going up and down the boardwalk, I don't think this.
well, if they want to
really-
ride the whole length of the boardwalk, they would be directed off at Grenoble, right, and sent down to Virginia and moved and put around.
No,
Or
they're
said
just-
Get off at Virginia.
Virginia.
Or get off at Grenoble, whichever.
Under this proposal,
Yeah.
right? They would be
Either
directed
get on or
off
off at
of-
Grenoble or get on and off at Virginia,
Right.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, right.
So if you're coming from anywhere, like Henlopen or whatever, you'd have to come down, go to First Street, and then up on Virginia if you use that.
But what do
that
they do
suggestion.
now at the other end when they're doing the boardwalk? Do they get off, or they just stop and turn around and come back?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
At the south end,
Yeah.
they usually have to do a U-turn at Queen Street or back up because it's too much sand encroachment
can't
on the
get off the
sidewalks to
crossway.
get a Surrey off or bicycle off.
Yep.
And then they either choose to come back on the boardwalk or they'll get off at Queen Street and do their thing. I guess maybe I don't understand the desire for the intent of
Yeah, that's,
recommendations 3 and 4. And they certainly, for me, would not be an alternative to any of this treatment up here. I think that one of the solutions has to be dealing with allowing people on and off at the north end. What that perfect solution is, I don't know.
At first glance, I'd say it's fine to suggest people exiting on Grenoble, as long as it's not an ordinance suggested. But the more I think about it, don't discount people's propensity to get lost in town. And if they exit on Grenoble and they're over by the Village Improvement Association at the corner of the Henlopen Hotel, they might lose their bearings. It's so, it sounds silly because the ocean is east, but you'd be surprised how many tourists don't grasp that concept, that the ocean is east.
They'll take the sidewalk then around the lake, maybe?
Yeah.
Well, if they make a left here, they come to 3 dead ends, essentially.
Yeah, I don't know that they're going to be able to make their way around the Henlopen and continue northerly and not get confused. If that makes any sense.
I'm trying
They
to
want to go in straight lines.
You have 2 groups. You have people that are recreational on the boardwalk. They're guests coming to town. Mom, dad, the kids, they're riding the boards. Then you have people that are bike riders that are either transiting or not transiting like I go back to my house in the south end of town. But if you would keep us off of the boardwalk, that would leave the boardwalk to the people that ride back and forth. They come to stay a couple of weeks. They turn around at the end of the Henlopen and go back towards the middle of town. And that's usually what they do. I don't think some of them get off. You'll see once in a while on the trail, you'll see a bike with a rental sign on the back. I think that happens. Those people have maps and they come from wherever they're going to go. But the real bikers, if they couldn't get on there on the north end, they'd go right on down First Street or go down Henlopen all the way to wherever they were going.
And I think that's where some of the signage comes in. You know, you say downtown Rehoboth that way, and it doesn't direct them to the boardwalk.
And that might help you.
Do we have a lot of traffic that takes the boardwalk that goes up to Henlopen State Park each day to be on the beach there? Do we know?
Most of the people that go to the state park don't ride the boardwalk. I did for a year and there are groups of people who do that. Because I see those guys every day.
Right.
But most of the people who ride the trail don't ride the boardwalk.
I see both groups, but there are people who just want to go for a 1-hour bike ride. That's their time frame. So the boardwalk is only a mile long. You can do it in 15 minutes. They will usually incorporate a trip up to Gordon's Pond, go at least halfway around Gordon's Pond, and then come back. So they're doing the boardwalk first because they want to see it, and then they're going to the state park second because they need to fill their hour and they want to see, what the state park is all about.
Yeah, I see a few of those people at the observation tower, and they're turning around and going back towards town. But those people might transit around the Henlopen Hotel like you're suggesting. I don't know. If you have riders, they're going to keep it right on going if they can't get on the boardwalk.
I'm in that area constantly. I walk my dog, take my dog to work, and I walk my dog around Lake Gerard. And I can tell you, in general, Lake Gerard, the whole park there, it's underutilized. You don't see many people there at all. On bikes, on pedestrians. It's you might walk around the whole thing and see maybe a couple or 3 people.
So essentially, what you're saying is the suggestion that you made that people would go around the Henlopen Hotel probably wouldn't work because they just wouldn't negotiate that. Am I following you?
I don't think it'll work. I don't. It's too circuitous. It's not a straight line. It's not the shortest distance between point A and point B, and it defies human nature, I think.
I don't either.
So what can we come up with? Do we want to try to come up with some recommendations that even they might be broad, not specific to any of these designs, such as that maybe the committee favors, recognizes the challenges of bicycles getting on and off, as well as surreys and trailers, and the challenges of intersecting people in that area. So we recommend seeking solutions to lessen congestion, particularly north of the Henlopen along Surfside Avenue. Focus on that rather than that option where it takes people off. Those could be augmented possibly, but the main focus should be north of the Henlopen.
I think we can eliminate those last two suggestions.
Eliminate the last two.
Grenoble and Virginia. Just take those off the board.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, Stan? With the point of the curve right there, is it possible to put like a big crosswalk, paint signs on across the avenue right there, which would kind of like block that zone a little bit for both bicycles and pedestrians?
Well, there is a piano key crosswalk here that's standard.
It's kind of, it's kind of a smaller size, but I mean, make it a little bit larger, go back to where they exit there with cars almost, like that whole block, like a 20-foot wide section across the road. Is that something that would be possible? I don't know. I mean, if it would help.
Anything's possible.
If it would help, if it would help make it less dangerous,
but
if it's more visible somehow.
Well,
unless you have other ideas.
Personally, because of the curve, if you've ever driven that, you don't even really see the piano key. You know,
That's right.
I never see it.
You're so right.
First of all, you're looking out at the ocean.
I'm thinking about like you see some of the blocks that they have like the diagonal ones that go across, so it's like a whole 20-foot by 20-foot wide section almost. But I don't know.
I would rather put something, put a bicycle out here, or in the middle here, rather than doing anything here.
I agree, but that's what I was talking about there, putting some type of a crosswalk across there for the bikes or something to highlight
another idea.
Go ahead.
I'm full of them today.
Go ahead. Good.
There would be a problem if what is now sidewalk were to be somehow widened and treated as boardwalk. Definitely the biggest problem that I see is that curve right there. Okay. What if the newly extended part of the boardwalk were to make an L at the end, so that no longer would it be possible to exit right at the curve, but everyone would exit closer to where that triangle is, that median strip.
Well, that was your other idea, when moving an asphalt thing here so the bicycles would come up.
I think
like
he means
that.
right at the end.
But it would seem to be a lot less dangerous if instead of a straight line going north, it would go straight and then curve to the left the entire street. If anything's possible, maybe that would be ideal, because that would get everyone. I'm sure that property owner with the double garages might not be too happy, but if the exit for this street was closer to where those, directly across from where those double garage doors are, that might solve two problems with, two birds with one stone.
And rather than have an exit and an entrance, just have an entrance exit combined into that parking lot?
Because it's one way. They come in down this way.
Exits only.
Yeah, that's exit.
But I mean, that's what I meant, combine them.
If where that pickup truck is at the top, what if that were all grass and you could no longer exit there? And what if everyone was entering and exiting where that arrow is?
Well, I can draw this, maybe it's better to illustrate this. I can draw this by moving this sidewalk out to this first line.
You get rid of the triangle and make it more like a rectangle.
And then putting an asphalt area here and trying to do a curve there, just so we have another idea.
I know this is dragging on.
Because at least it gets it away from
I kind of like that idea.
This seems like one of those things where if you were able to do architectural drawings or 3 or 4 different proposals, people could say that's the one. And there seems to be a lot of potential to improve it. It's a complicated kind of little piece of real estate there, but
well, I guess
you're on the right track.
I guess
I kind of like that.
I think that's an option too.
The danger is it's such a straight line if you're on a bike, to Surf Avenue.
Your eye wants to take you there. Yeah, so you would major reconfiguration there to get you. What is our committee comment on this layout. I don't think it works.
I
No,
don't
no,
know,
neither.
it's, as a cyclist, it's unsafe. I think it's too narrow of a space, two-way traffic.
You
You're
have
gonna, either
cars
gonna
going.
curb or you're gonna hit a car. You're either gonna hit a curb or a car.
What about the pedestrians crossing that constantly to feed meters too?
So it dumps you out
The bikes
too
and
close
all.
to the circle. Yeah, it's got constricted areas there. It pushes cars back too far. So, well, we'll say we'll disfavor that. We'll go for,
Can you go back one slide, just a second?
Yeah,
One more.
you're drawing probably.
The overhead one, of the whole target. There.
Tamont.
So on that one, what you were referring to is like the triangle, would it be a triangle or would it be more of a rectangle along the road? Like what you were referring to?
I don't think it would have to be exactly where the arrow is, just below the triangle. I think that triangle could be reconfigured. It would just make so much sense to have, you know, bicycles and pedestrians and everyone else exiting a little bit further south
yeah.
on Lake than right where it is, which is right almost exactly at that corner that's so problematic.
Would it slow them down a little bit too?
I think so, yeah. I mean,
And then turn that way back.
if you're, you know, on a bicycle going this way and you want to make a right-hand turn, you're going to have to slow down enough to make a right-hand turn. And the sharper the turn, the more you're going to have to slow.
So if that blue area was sidewalk,
And I think it could be as gradual a curve or as sharp as a curve as you want to make it, but, you know.
so if that sidewalk came off up here somewhere, that would force you to bicycle down here, right?
Yeah.
And you're gonna build a wall so that you can't cheat.
Right.
Maybe it's down here and then this area here is reconfigured so that all the traffic comes down there. That could even be two-way traffic, frankly.
Yeah, that's what I think would be better rather than have two entrances on that road.
I guess I like dumping people off here because then they have a choice to go this direction or that direction.
I like that idea the best for now, but I think this reconfiguration deserves some serious consideration.
We can say that that's an option. It fits what we are intimating, and that is something needs to be done with this area.
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't favor option number 2 from the streets and transit, or 3 or 4.
And maybe with the strong recommendation that whatever the city decides to do with the entrance and the exits of the boardwalk, it be closely related to the potential hazard of that sharp curve at Surf Avenue and Lake.
I'm seeing something a little bit different than based on what he's saying. I'm seeing it designed a little bit differently as far as, if you want to look over here, I take this area here. What happens if you take it out like this and make that grassy, take in cars parked this way and this way, with this being the roadway coming out here?
Yeah,
That's what I'm hearing you say.
Or something in between.
Because that way, this becomes kind of like a parking lot area,
Right.
and this becomes the main road coming up this way.
I like where the stands triangle is. If that were closed right now,
Yep,
closed to
exactly.
all traffic, I think the world might be a better place in that
I do
neighborhood.
too.
Yeah.
Especially for that curve. Because you've got the walkway down to the beach right there anyway, the sand that goes off, across the crosswalk, right? But it makes it a more defined area too. That's what I was seeing when you were saying that.
I think you're right.
Well, I'm having a hard time, but you
Yeah,
get the idea.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
I like that.
as long as you're not losing parking spots, that's the.
You're talking bicycles and cars, not pedestrians, is that correct?
So this is a grass island. This is the way the sidewalk then comes over here.
What happens to that
What
sidewalk?
we might have to do is put two handicap spaces down here to relocate that one possibly, which would work. People are still gonna need to walk through here, so maybe
Have the exit for the bike still where you've got it there,
right here.
right next to the building.
Oh, here.
Yeah, and then they follow the flow of the traffic from there.
Yeah, but that gets rid of this. Frank wanted that. Cause that would make,
Because you've got an obstruction down there at the end, but they can't ride through there, so you're directing them through the main area across.
Have to go
That's
around.
two different ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know.
Guy's idea is different than.
It is different.
Even if
Yeah.
the sidewalk were blocked where it is currently, and even if the sidewalk were just put 10 feet further south, I think that would, 10 feet further
Here?
west.
here,
No,
At the end.
at the triangle there. You know, it's
In other words, curve the sidewalk around, or
Yeah,
diagonal around.
I guess the criticism would be if you have people walking with their beach blankets and beach towels and umbrellas coming down Surf Avenue, they'll want to cross exactly where the current crossing is. But what I'm saying is, even if you just move the sidewalk, just move that crossing a little bit down, I
Here.
think it would increase safety. And it's another one of those things where people want to go in the straightest line and take the most direct route, but what if that route diverted them just even 10 feet down?
so are you satisfied with this as a second option? But there would be like some bollards here or something here so that bicyclists can't go that track. Or then you need to do it at this end because you don't want to get people go on there and
Are baby
trap.
carriages wider than bicycles?
No.
The double ones?
Double ones are at the maximum 40 or 42 inches.
So if you're blocking bicycles, you're blocking those as well.
You can stagger them so that somebody can they can walk through them. Have you ever seen that?
I
But
guess.
you can't, makes it hard to ride through.
Right.
So the 4 recommendations from the Street and Transportation Committee. One is the walk your bike zone. Have we kind of disfavored it, we'll say?
Don't know on that.
A no, or?
It's unrealistic.
So we're gonna say disfavor,
Not in favor.
be polite. 3 and 4, which were redirecting people on and off at Grenoble, Virginia, we're gonna disfavor. The one with the bike lane parallel to the curb, we're gonna disfavor because of what we've already said, dumps people out in the wrong place down there. And it's constriction. So the 2 options we've said, we favor doing something there, and I don't mind saying we don't know the perfect solution, but here are 2 concepts that maybe could be developed. One is that concept, and then the other is this concept. With
So it's more like the end of Rehoboth Avenue at the Boardwalk.
Can you just put the proposal as some kind of a J bend?
down
on
here.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So vehicles can get off here, but bicycles get off here.
Well, I don't know why the bikes couldn't get off with the vehicles. I just,
Well, that's where I'm kind of
yeah.
Yeah.
I'd rather
favoring
use
that,
it.
but there's certainly another, a different option.
Yeah.
Now, this, of course, requires playing with it
Good.
a little wider sidewalk, right? That's kind of your thing.
That was my idea,
Yeah.
Okay. I'm fine with doing a couple options and
Yeah. I think it's on the right track. Better than what they did.
Can you mark them up and send them to us
mm-hmm.
for comments?
Yeah. Yeah, before we submit them to the commission.
When is your due date for the recommendation?
Oh, none. The Street Transportation Committee is next going to have this on their agenda first week in May, I think, so maybe we'll get it done by then. They can look at it and critique it. I certainly respect what they come up with. I think, again, we have a different perspective, but we've also are providing illustrations that I think, pictures worth 1,000 words, that they're much more helpful.
You could almost pick up 2 parking spots.
Take out what?
You could almost pick up 2 parking spots if in another, like still having it with the end there, came around, you could park along the end almost.
But they can't be backing out into that
No,
traffic.
that'd be closed off.
Be
Yeah.
closed off.
So you'd be coming around. That's at least the way I'm
This
looking at
could
it.
still be a handicap parking possibly or something.
Yeah.
Any other concepts?
But to put green spot along the road, so it's definitely,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And they
Oh,
come in the other way.
I got you.
See what I mean? That way it's definitely defined as, there you go.
Something like this.
Yeah, something like that, but not really trying, just maybe more of a rectangular rather than a triangular
Okay.
strip of land.
So we'll play with that and send it out. I'm gonna confer with Frank first to kind of get that concept, and then I'll send it out to you all. And Jay, anybody else have anything else on this particular topic? Yeah,
I think you realize the real problems and you're trying to attack them.
Safety.
and again, for me, I'm looking at not just the narrow bicycle, but the ones with the trailers, and then the Surreys too, because we've got those to deal with, and that's why I like dumping them into a travel lane, a traffic lane, if you will, rather than elsewise. So.
This is taking us a
Especially a little
lot of
quieter.
time, and I apologize for throwing.
No,
so many
it's
ideas.
perfect.
I mean, it's one thing that is remarkable. If you go down the boardwalk, it's remarkable how well people behave considering the sheer numbers of people put into a small space. And even when it comes to the wider things like Surreys or bike trailers, the people still tend to ride 2 abreast. And when you put them, in like a trailer, it's taking up no room, probably even less than 2 people riding 2 abreast. So it's kind of remarkable that people behave as well as they do, but they do. Nobody wants to wreck.
Mm-hmm. The only problem I have with speeders, I call them, or exercisers, that shouldn't have no business being up there. But so I think what we've come up with is enough analysis to be able to make recommendations to pass on. Obviously, I don't think anything's going to be done for this summer at all, but I think having an awareness, especially this marries with our last report on vehicular entrances there. We said something needs to be done. So if you're going to resolve that, hey, why not at least look at this at the same time? And then maybe something can be resolved for next year. Because I think the problem is going to get bigger and bigger with more and more people coming. But that's why I think we should emphasize and reiterate once in a while, we don't want that bicycle mapping to be routing people in this direction, because then I think we'll get overwhelmed and inundated. Anything else on
That
that?
mapping's going into effect this summer, right? For the summer? I mean, part of the directional thing? Is that going
This
into summer?
wayfinding thing,
Yeah.
this wayfinding thing, I have no clue.
Okay.
We got funding through a grant to do the design, but we have no funding for realizing it or creating the map. So that's going to be another year probably, I guess.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Very good. All right, gang, we're going to,
Stan,
thank you. Yeah.
Is that picture available online? I'd like to get a copy of that so I can see.
Which picture?
That one right there, before you did all the stuff to it.
This one?
Yeah,
It's Google Earth.
that's just Google Earth.
Well, are you interested in
That one there, I'm just thinking.
with the stuff in it?
It's fine. either
Because I can
way.
send that to you.
Yeah,
All of course, all of these things, like that's a Google
Okay.
map.
okay.
But if you want, just let me know what you want. I'll send it to you.
Stan, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Can you go back a couple pictures?
With,
I hate to keep doing
No?
this to you. Next one.
That one's available.
That one.
Probably didn't help.
Yeah.
Okay, no.
So another thing that this might do,
They did.
and I guess we kind of realized this when I was throwing out, but if you're traveling south on a bicycle on the right-hand lane and you successfully complete the curve, if you want to go to
Up
the
here.
boardwalk, and then all of a sudden we've introduced a J bend
Yes,
into the north end,
I gave him that.
you're gonna have to continue to stay on the right and then stop and make a left-hand turn into Surfside Place.
Yeah, so bicycles coming
It'll-
down here.
It'll
Yeah.
slow, that person, if they keep on traveling down lake, they're gonna have to really slow before they take a left-hand turn.
Right.
As opposed to just going straight and kind of rolling the dice with maybe there's a car coming the other way.
Yeah.
That would favor your second one that you drew. And that's a real problem. It's dangerous. And I do that. It's
Right.
dangerous to keep
Right here.
going.
But if, so rather than the bicycle coming to where the cursor is and trying to cut across, with that J turn, you're coming down to maybe here
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then turning.
And then
That's an
taking a
improvement.
left.
So
Yeah.
you've got that buffer zone, if you
Yeah.
will. Okay. So
If you had to go even further, it would even be less dangerous.
Right.
well, then you could do John Ecker roads, come all the way down and come back up. And
Well, I would just keep on going down First
I'm
Street.
favoring
I'd never
that
turn.
two-way road there, which the authorities may not agree to that either, because if you think about it, you need a stop sign and stop bar here, but then you need a second stop sign and stop bar there. So it's not as clean as it looks.
That's a tough corner also.
Yeah. But even if it's one way, well, that's
So it's
right.
one
I think
entrance
two-way
and
is,
exit off there.
two-way is better, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very good. So I'll write that up. The streets, we've already visited signs. We set signs on bike racks is possible. The Streets and Transportation Committee keeps pushing this kind of sign. If somebody wants to bring it up, they can. Otherwise, I've considered this committee has said, no, we're not in favor of them right now. I just don't know where you would put them, and I'm getting concerned about too much signage, junking things up. So does anybody want to talk about it or? Nope. Okay. Let's take a look at potential future agenda topics. I don't know if I have that on here or not. You all received a support document as well as it's embedded in the agenda of all these different things. Obviously, we didn't get to city representative giving a status of things. I would really like to consider for the May meeting that I'm trying to figure a way to combine things. We had talked about at the May meeting actually walking the boardwalks, a meeting in the south, walking the entirety of the boardwalk, and that's our meeting venue. And then looking in the 3 restrooms, which should have been finished and renovated and signed off by then. And then maybe while we're at the lifeguard station, we can step inside off the boardwalk, and maybe the city rep can give us updates on all that thing at that point. If I can coordinate something like that. Are you interested in something like that?
Yes.
Now what do we do if it rains?
Bring umbrellas.
Bring a rain hat.
Unless it's
Unless it's-
thunderstorm or
yeah.
pouring. Because if so, I could put an alternative that we meet at the lifeguard station or something, or something like that. So if you like, I'll work on that kind of thing.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And then that'll get us on there. That way we can ask the city rep what's the status of things, but we can also see what the status of things are, because Memorial Day weekend is that meeting after. We're meeting the 13th, I believe. Anything else? We've got citizen comment. Anything else? We'll set our future meeting dates. Anybody else good to the order? Any comments? If not, we'll call this meeting adjourned early at 10:56 a.m. Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
meeting.